Welcome to Caleb Can't Read. I'm Jordan Rabel.
And I'm Caleb Terrence.
So this is going to happen a couple times. We're bound to come across this when it comes to contemporaries in the field of writing, or that authors know one another, right? So later on down the line, we'll end up with, like, you know how we did William S. Burroughs, and he was good friends with Jack Kerouac. Jack Kerouac was an author in his own right. This is going to be kind of the same thing today, where it's somebody that we have covered in the past was closely connected with this person here, but I felt that they deserved their own episode because they were a lot of things that we did not go over that were only focused on that first author.
Okay, who
do you get it?
Who knew him?
You'll see.
Okay.
But as a segue into this, I would like to ask you, what's the biggest explosion you've ever made?
Biggest explosion I've ever made?
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Outside of the bathroom.
Shut the fuck up.
That's a good joke.
That was fucking low-hanging fruit, dude. No.
Not when you're sitting down, it's not.
Oh, God. No, I don't think I've ever caused, like, a large explosion outside of, like, I don't know, playing with, like, mortars as a teenager or something.
Playing with what?
Mortars.
Oh, mortars. Yeah, I was going to say, like...
That's probably the biggest thing.
You ever do the piccolo peat bombs? Do you remember those?
No, I don't think I fucked with that. I was definitely more of a Roman candle war guy.
Oh, yeah, for sure, for sure.
That was good shit.
You know, and there's all these stories, of course they always come out around 4th of July and shit, where there's, like, all the gory fucking pictures of people blowing off their hands with mortars and M80s and stuff.
Yeah.
And
yeah, let go of it, dumbass.
Well, I know, but then, like, here you are holding a Roman candle, and every time I'm doing it, and I feel the heat from it, and I'm just like, who's to say they don't all go off at the same time right now? And
it's not
this
about
is how
that,
it
man.
happens.
It's about the rush. And the best part of the war is when, you know, you're taking cover behind the park bench, and then you realize that, like, hey, man, there's no way to stop this from going off right now. If I'm not paying attention, I'll shoot myself in the face. I'll shoot it into a fucking tree. I'll shoot it into this house right here. I'm 100% at risk of causing a fire right now, and you just get up there, dude.
We had a fantastic 4th of July party before I knew you at Nicole's parents' place when they were out of town. I don't know if we ever told them about it. It'd be funny if they're secretly listening to this, but either way, man, we got up to some shit, and there was this guy who I invited, and he invited another guy that nobody knew, and this dude was a total fucking edgelord. He loved to hold, like, big, like, fucking blasters, hand blasters, finger blasters, if you will. No, hand blasters, if you will, and throw them at the last second so they went off in the air and shit. Mm-hmm. And we would all be like, we're all drunk, and we're like, dude, stop. And he's like, what? Why is everyone so worried? And it's like, what do you think we're worried, dumb shit? But anyway, no, I just didn't like that guy.
You have the classic, I'm not going to hit you.
Yeah, well, did you
swinging the stick around?
You're a bad driver, but did you die? No. Thank you. That still proves my point.
I just wanted to show you my sick butterfly knife. Please, we're all smoking weed. Please.
I never park my car and ask myself later, but I didn't die, did I? You know, no, I don't have the reason to do that because I'm a very good driver. Well, I'm adequate.
I don't know about your metaphor there. Anyway, so your segue into this was explosions. Was Oppenheimer a novelist?
No, I never saw that movie still.
I mean, I want to see it, I guess. It just
because you see Cillian Murphy's butt cheeks, don't you?
Well, that's what I hear. No, we've been over this. We've actually talked. This isn't the first time we've talked about.
Yeah, I know, but it's not Cillian. It's Cillian, right?
Cillian Murphy's anatomy and his wiener specifically. Yeah, it's
right,
already
because 28 days later.
28 days later, you see lightly tugged on, flaccid, supposedly flaccid from a coma penis, which I suppose actually. You know, my original stance was like, no, that's clearly been tugged on, but if he's been asleep the whole time and there's a little bit of engorgement because he hasn't taken a pee in a while.
I guess.
You know, but no, pee stored in the balls.
It's in the balls, so his balls would have been larger. Right?
Yeah, so no, it's clearly been tugged
anyway,
on.
I had this Mormon kid show me how to make piccolo peat bombs, and that was a big thing for like a week for me. Anyway.
All right. You want to let your dog out before we go any further?
Probably. She seems like she's not wanting this. I'm gonna get the fuck out of here.
Better not hear you whining later. We're going to give you the beat.
We will. We're going to hear it. It's fine. It's... fuck. Man, this fucking... I need to get, like, a gamer chair for this shit, not this...
Maybe you just outgrown it. To put it nicely, maybe we should install... Have you thought about... How bad do you need the shocks on your car?
You know, you want to make... Yeah.
If we could make, like, a seat for you.
But I'm not the one in a booster seat right now. Fuck you. Yeah, why don't you rifle through the phone book under you and try to figure out...
If we're talking about what's going to be more strenuous on this podcast, just fiscally, I would definitely say installing fucking shocks and struts into your chair, Jordan.
You know how the Roseland Theater is supposed to bounce? That's what I've got under the floorboards of every room in this house.
Yeah, but there's no bounce in that. See, if it bounces, then it can take the weight and come back. That's actually staying static. It's concerning.
Come. So, let's get started, shall we?
Yeah, I want to take my hoodie off.
All right, go for it.
All right, hang on.
God, I wish that we were like filming this so that everyone could see the less than sensual reveal.
I know, dude. It's always a fucking bummer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, you knocked off the cover. All right, there you go. Ooh.
Yeah, it's never like it's never like a great feeling when like you have a really active job and then a woman is seeing you take your shirt off in a private setting for the first time and then just watching the look on her face as she's like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, no, I also
just you
look very normal.
For some reason, you see all the muscles in her face just kind of let up. They're no longer tense. They're just like, oh.
It's either that or surprised by the hair, which we discussed before. So.
Well, Sir Timothy Shelley, 2nd Baronet of Castle Goring in Sussex, is of course someone who needs no introduction. His father, Sir Bysshe Shelley, 1st Baronet, was actually born in New Jersey back when it was still a colony. And although he already came from an affluent family, he managed to secure enough wealth and land through multiple marriages that he was just sort of handed the Sir title because he had so much money and everyone figured he just earned it. Landed gentry, if you will. But Bysshe's son, Sir Tim, entered the game of politics by the time he was in his mid-30s, where he was elected as a member of Parliament and would remain there until 1818. His wife Elizabeth, on the other hand, was nothing special. She was the daughter of a wealthy butcher. Anyway, Tim and Elizabeth would...
Yeah, nothing special there.
Nothing really. Tim and Elizabeth would altogether have 7 kids, but our focus will be on their eldest, born August 4th, 1792 in Warnham, West Sussex, and the subject of today's episode, Percy Bysshe Shelley. Ringing any bells? It's okay if it's not.
I mean, I recognize the last name.
Because we have covered...
I mean, we did marry Shelley, right?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, there we are.
It sounds like it would be a common name. I don't fucking know. Like
Shelley?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Anyway.
But I don't know. I didn't want to... Oh, never mind.
Don't make assumptions.
Yeah.
Now, because Percy led an extremely sheltered childhood, there really isn't much history to him until he gets a little older. What we do know is that by the age of 6, Percy attended school at a local church, where he was found to have an affinity for languages, as well as an impressive memory. But although he'd be given praise for his academics, he'd soon found out that when you turn 11 and go to middle school, being smart makes you a fucking dork. When Percy Shelley attended the Scion House Academy in Middlesex, he was relentlessly bullied. I feel like you were on the giving end of that spectrum, weren't you?
At what age?
11.
No, I was poor. So I was definitely on the taking end of that.
Those are usually the bullies.
No, they're not.
Really? Not
No, because you don't have the right clothing.
Oh, right. You weren't wearing Stussy, so they
you don't have the right clothing, so you're getting singled out in that manner.
Right.
And then you come around, and then it takes a couple of years, and you figure out that just because you're not in the right clothes, you can actually punch quite well. And then it flips.
Well, yet rather than sit back and just take this abuse, Percy's usual response was to fly into an uncontrollable rage. He'd just scream and start windmilling. And the Scion House was one of those old-timey schools where the kids would have to stay in dormitories away from home for long periods of time. And because of his endless bullying, Percy started having night terrors. You know what those are?
Yep.
All right. Well, like, nightmares will make you fidget or mumble in your sleep, but night terrors have you full-on flailing and shouting. So that's what Percy got. And because of this, he would barely get any sleep. And because of that, he started sleepwalking. Now, Percy's older cousin, Thomas Medwin, went to the same school, and he was older than Percy by about 4 years, so at least according to him, he was Percy's only real form of protection at the school. Sometimes when Percy sleepwalked, he would make it as far as Medwin's dormitory on the other side of the school, probably because he was having a dream about getting his ass kicked and he was going to his cousin for help. Right now we're in our
extreme. I mean,
right now we're in our feeling bad about him phase, but that won't last.
Don't spoil it, man. Come on. Surprise me. Woo me.
Boo.
No, fuck you.
Either way, the night terrors and sleepwalking would keep Percy up at night, and as mentioned before, he would have very little rest between days. This led to him suffering daytime hallucinations. So here's the thing. Percy never mentioned his childhood, his bullying in particular. This was all from his cousin Thomas Medwin's account, and honestly, he could have been making some of this shit up. But we do know that Percy Shelley suffered hallucinations throughout his entire life, and a rough school life is the only real answer we have to them. I mean, schizophrenia wasn't discovered until 1887, so maybe that. Maybe, but it seems doubtful.
I don't know, man. Once we venture away from the tism, I'm actually not as apt to comment on these things. To be completely honest.
Well, yeah, all I have are really just accounts from my dad's side, but like
I don't really know anything about that shit, so
I don't know. I think if you're well, I can say it from the perspective of having really bad fucking insomnia to the point where you're seeing things. That's not fun, and so I kind of do think that was probably it. I don't know if it was schizophrenia.
A little bit. I don't think that like that's going to cause like vivid hallucinations. Though.
They get pretty vivid.
Oh yeah, then no, probably not. Probably not. Just not.
I'm not going to go into it too much, but yeah, no.
We've all seen that. We've all been chased by shadow people. But.
Well, I mean, that's kind of like your irregular sleep is also what causes fucking sleep paralysis, which is vivid, you know. So, but either way, while Percy was at school, he did attach himself to a few subjects, namely science. Percy was an excellent student when it came to most things, but his love of science would influence him into doing some side projects in his spare time. It's not like he was looking to better understand physics or chemical compounds or anything like that. He was just interested in the properties of gunpowder, specifically. Percy Shelley liked to blow shit up, and his experiments would on at least one...
How expansive can that topic really be?
We're gonna see.
Okay, like really, how, like
Percy Shelley liked to blow shit up, and his experiments would on at least one occasion go a little too far, where he managed to blow up a fence at school.
That's it? You know how many fences I've destroyed?
Yeah, but you've done that with large objects.
Yeah.
Like yourself or trees.
It's fucking sick.
To actually have enough gunpowder to blow up a fence, I feel like that's quite a bit.
I'm still waiting to get on a job site and be like, yes, this will be my magnum opus.
I feel like demolitions expert should have been the career path you went to, but...
I'd have to learn math.
Well, yeah, and also, I don't think that you're legally allowed to take side projects there, you know? So
Fair.
Well, and when Percy came home for spring or winter break, he would usually torment his siblings with homemade firecrackers, as well as shock them with electricity, and sometimes splash them with acid.
Whoa.
It couldn't have been
dude.
that kind of... It couldn't have been like, you know...
It's a gentle acid.
Yeah, not like
battery acid.
Not like full-on like women on the subway, you know, horror stories from the London Times or something like that. Like, it has to be like a gentle acid, like mildly burns, I guess.
What the fuck? It only takes off like a layer of skin. Like,
yeah, something like that.
That's fucking... This kid's a little fucking freak.
He is a little fucking weird.
No, he's a little freak. It needs to be put somewhere, like clearly, because he's like blowing shit up and throwing acid on people.
He's having hallucinations. Yeah.
No, there's no point in history where it was more like a lot of the shit that we talk about on this podcast is like really fucked up. It was the norm for the time. There is no point in history when a little kid throwing acid on people was not a like whoa.
Well, and I tried looking it up, but shock them with the electricity. He would go home and shock his siblings with electricity. How? I could find no mention of how he was doing this. But, like, I don't think he had that fucking...
with some copper and shit?
The fake gum where you're just like, want one? You know, and it just...
Like, what time period is this?
1700s.
Some weird little crank-up battery pack on his neck?
It has to be.
You, like, go out in the fucking night and harness it like Benjamin Franklin and then store it in a jar. Like, I don't...
Hey, hold this string for me and fly my kite at night, would you please? Yeah. No, all of this shit only took place for, like, 2 years at the Scion House Academy, by the way. By 1804, when he was 13, Percy was transferred to Eton College, which was far, far worse for him. Because now you're not just a weirdo, you're a teenager and a weirdo. And Percy not only faced the same bullying issues as before, but he would be branded a loner because he refused to participate in fagging.
This sounds like a very lazily written school shooter like origin story.
Like why I did this kind of shit.
Like
I was pushed too far.
Like if I was going to watch a show about a school shooter becoming a school shooter that was just really lazily put together.
Yeah.
like,
oh, let's see. They're checking all the boxes here. Yep.
Yeah. Like,
little weirdo bullied relentlessly. You remember what fagging is? we talked about it with Roald Dahl.
Oh, fuck, I don't remember.
Basically, if you were like the freshman somewhere, then all the older boys would be able, like especially the seniors, would be able to use you however they wanted. Like,
didn't they like make people like warm up toilets for them and stuff?
That's what Roald Dahl did specifically. Yeah. He would have to warm up the toilet seat for the boys until it was time for them to take a shit because they didn't want to sit down and it was cold. So he would just sit down on his naked ass. But a lot of the times it was like, you know, fetching stuff for them and stuff. Anyways, in England it's called fagging. So, well, apparently,
God damn it.
Apparently you can say no to that. But because Percy wouldn't play along, it got a whole new crowd to torment him. In fact, a popular thing to do while Percy attended Eton was to gather a bunch of kids around to swarm him and try to provoke him to fight. This was called Shelley baiting.
They had a name for it.
They had a whole name for it.
Jesus Christ, dude. Oh my God, what does this man grow to do?
And of course, Percy's penchant to rage out and fight entire mobs of children, as well as rumors of his frequent hallucinations and love of explosions, led to the nickname Mad Shelley. So they would just pick on this fucking small child until he would just go like, and just fucking start swinging, and they'd all just beat the shit out of him. You're right. This is the beginnings of a school shooter.
This is past school shooter. This is so cartoonish that we're entering supervillain territory now.
I love that though.
What's he gonna fucking do?
Shelley baiting? Oh my God. And by the way, Percy's gunpowder experiments only seemed to go as far as the make a bomb stage and nothing else. Like you said, how far can you really go with it?
Still troubling, man.
Yeah, no, they just got bigger as time went on. It seems like his biggest was while he was at Eton, when Percy managed to blow up a tree stump, which is actually kind of impressive.
It's pretty sick.
That's a big explosion, especially because I imagine he put it on top of the tree stump. Like, I can understand if he like dug a hole underneath it or something, lit it, and see if he could make the stump jump.
Yeah. I mean, just like blowing up. Did you just say make the stump jump?
Yeah, something like that. You know, so you blew it up, but like, no, he placed it on top of the tree stump and fucking, he made that cocksucker.
I mean, are we talking like?
Exist.
I mean, I don't suppose we have these details, but is it described? Hang on, was it described as if it was like there's a fucking crater there now, or was it just like, oh hey, some wood's like chipped?
I looked that up. I tried to even find out, like, are we talking about like an elm tree, or are we talking about like, you know, a much smaller tree?
Talking about like an old rotted stump, or are we talking about like this bitch just came down?
I couldn't find anything about it. It was just, yeah, that motherfucker made a tree stump no longer exist, which to me is still just like, all right, not fucking with him. I'm not Shelley baiting him anymore.
He's gonna blow up a building.
Huh?
He's gonna blow up a person.
I mean, that's really the natural progression here.
Like, next time you guys fucking surround him, he's going to squeal and fucking light the stick of dynamite up his ass and charge you.
In 1809, Percy Shelley would change his name to Ted Kaczynski. No.
Jesus.
So anyway, from his earliest days at the Scion House, Percy found a love for two forms of literature which I'm sure weren't available to him at home: romance and horror. Now, you have to remember, back in those days, the occult was a type of science. It was fringe science, but it was science nonetheless.
Is this the same time period as that one, the astrology bullshit man?
Oh, Nostradamus?
Yeah.
No, he was...
that was earlier, right?
Yeah, like a good 600 years before.
Okay.
But, you know, we hadn't really gotten that much further as far as science went. So, and while Percy was merely interested in the subject of occultism at Scion House, he was now holding full-on rituals by himself at Eton. He was actually encouraged by a teacher that worked there. This man, Dr. James Lind, was admired by everyone for his eccentricity, not least of which was Percy Shelley. This guy was a physician as well as a part-time astronomer and occultist, which I find funny to be a part-time astronomer and occultist. Like, oh, you know, I just dabble in looking at the stars
like
weekends.
You're writing down the hours for that.
Yeah,
Get the fuck
as
out
if.
of here.
Yeah.
Like,
drew a different type of squiggly circle today, still did nothing.
I like to play pretend.
Although the question had been raised on at least a few occasions as to whether or not Dr. Lind was even a real doctor. But still, he worked there, you know. he nonetheless knew what he was talking about when it came to established science. He laid the framework for Benjamin Franklin's lightning rod experiments, and he was a big demonstrator in galvanism. We talked about this before, but in case you forgot, galvanism is that shit they do when they shock a dead frog into moving. It's just pumping shit full of electricity. Yeah.
Like it moved.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Like,
anyway, it was Dr. Lind that gave Percy the materials he needed to see if he could get things going in the occultism department. We don't have proof of the results, but they're not hard to guess. Nothing fucking happened. I'm not even sure exactly what materials he gave them for occultism. Like, what do you need? Oh, Percy, you need the blood of a child? Like, I don't know what he gave him, but either way,
all right, man.
It was Percy's close association with Dr. Lind that justified him in the eyes of his peers, though. By the time Shelley graduated Eton College in 1810 at the age of 17, he would be seen as someone just a little weird, but an all-around cool guy. Kind of got treated like the quiet kids after Columbine, you know? Hey, you want to come eat with us? It's that kind of shit.
Is that a thing? What are you talking about?
Yeah, no, everyone got real worried after Columbine because the rumor was that the shooters were like... Yeah, I know. Did your parents ever fucking come talk to you?
Dude, I lived in Atlanta at the fucking time. You think anybody gave a shit? Fuck no.
I remember my parents coming in and just being like, hey, so how were you treated at school? And at the time, I was just like... I thought that they were worried that I would be a target or something. Like, no, I don't feel like anyone would shoot me. I feel like I'm a pretty all right guy at school. And then I later realized, oh, they were seeing if I was planning something. No, I'm good, you guys. That's okay. That's not how I would do it.
See, now what my mom didn't realize is not letting me play violent video games made me even more mad.
Mm-hmm. I really should have played it up to that, just being like, I don't know, guys. Sometimes I can't stay up past 9:30, and I just get real mad. I get real angry.
I just get so angry, and I just internalize it, and I just go. I
just feel like if I had an avenue like GTA 3 or something, then I could really, I don't know, let off some steam, you know? But also in this last year of school, Percy Bysshe Shelley would start his career as a writer, writing not one, not two, but 4 pieces of work. At just 17 years old, Shelley managed to find a publisher and write his first novella called Zastrozzi, which is a wild fucking tale of backstabbing brothers and torture, and honestly, just something a 17-year-old would write, you know?
Was it decent? Like, was it?
No. Not really. It's largely forgotten. But by the time Shelley enrolled in Oxford that same year, he already had a small cult following among the kids at school. I mean, he was the one who, like, could write, you know? It's like, oh, who's Percy? He's no longer the weird one. He's the, oh, yeah, that kid's a writer, you know? So he got some respect.
Just over there in his duster.
Yeah. Just really into the Matrix and no one's asking
his duster and his neck beard.
The Crow.
1700s. Nobody's going to tell him he doesn't have the build for it.
Early 18. Now, that same year, Shelley would print a poetry collection called Original Poetry by Victor and Césaire. Now, under that title, it would also say in parentheses, Percy Bysshe Shelley and Elizabeth Shelley. So I'm not sure what the joke was, but yeah, Percy and his sister Elizabeth used pseudonyms for the title of the book, where they would contribute 16 poems altogether. Percy wrote 11, and Elizabeth wrote 5. Although poetry is what Percy would later be known for, so this would seem like a momentous occasion, the reviews for Victor and Césaire were instead focused on his sister's poetry. And not because it was good. No, her poetry was called downright scribble, sentimental nonsense, and a waste of paper.
Jesus,
it's a little harsh for teenagers.
Fucking A, just say it's... just be like, hey, teenagers wrote it.
Yeah. No, I don't know why they had to be so fucking mean.
And they're
about
like,
it.
wait a minute. They're just like, no. No, a 14-year-old girl wrote that, so that's actually a grown woman. So we can be as mean as we want.
Actually, no, that really could have been.
That's
it.
probably
Like,
it.
Yeah, just like because if they're not focused on his shit at all, and they're just like a girl writing, yeah, no, that was probably totally it.
Well, no, because by those standards, that's not a child anymore.
Yeah,
but Percy's still a child.
Oh, we're not
right?
going to go into that. Yeah.
What the fuck? That's probably it, dude.
It really could be. But the biggest issue the book had was actually plagiarism. The 14th poem in the collection, one called St. Edmund's Eve, was revealed to have been published by someone else 9 years ago in 1801. Now, Percy was quick to say that was one his sister Elizabeth wrote, but you see, the poem was first printed in a book called Tales of Terror, which sounds like the kind of shit he would read. Regardless, the publisher worried about the possibilities of a lawsuit, and Percy told them to just shut it down.
So he did plagiarism?
Yeah.
He did a plagiarism.
He did a plagiarism. I'm guessing he did a plagiarism. Although it's poems by Victor and Césaire or whatever, they don't tell you which poems are by Victor and which ones are by Césaire, the names that they were both taken. So he says that was his sister's, but if it's in Tales of Terror and he was reading up all of that shit while he was in college, I say it's him, honestly. Still, 1,480 copies of original poetry by Victor and Césaire had hit the streets to some mild success, but because of the plagiarism, was never reprinted. Today, only 4 original copies of the book exist. After this was a full-length occult horror novel called St. Irvine, or The Rosicrucian, a Romance. And instead of his name, Percy signed the work anonymously as being written by, quote, a gentleman of the University of Oxford. Which was true. He was now attending college in Oxford, but what a fucking pompous way to announce that to everyone, you know?
I mean, like, how else do you announce it? Is there a non-pompous way to say that?
I don't know.
You might as well ham it up, dude.
I mean, you can wear the fucking sweatshirt, but who doesn't own that, you know? Like,
No,
I've always wanted to make my own Harvard sweatshirt, but it's spelled Harvard. And I don't know. I thought it would be fun.
Yes, that's right. Me, Mr. Big Penis Brain Academy. Yes.
I don't know. I think it's always weird when you introduce yourself as like, hey, Caleb, CDL certified. You know, it's like, you don't need to put that
Forklift
part.
certified? That's right.
Like, have you ever actually known somebody to call themselves by doctor or anything like that when they say, hi, I'm Dr. whatever?
Only when they first get it.
Yes. I've known one person do
because
that.
they're having a good time with it. And you should humor them. Come on, man.
Yeah,
they got
yeah.
the
Come on. Good on you.
Come on.
But it was still just like, I'm not calling you that. I'm not calling you doctor or anything. I think after that, he was only in the department for a little bit, but I would just be like, oh, Mr. John. And no, no, doctor. As a matter of fact, like
even before they get it, they're like, "I'm in graduate school." Oh shit!
Yeah,
all right, good.
I know. Oh, dude. Oh,
Thank you for taking time out of your obviously incredibly busy schedule to come and. What do you want?
No, I would always have lunch at the same spot at work where like I was always there, and there was a doctor at our work that was also always there, and she had that respect. I'd be doctor, and she'd also respond with doctor, and it was like good, you know, and she would, and she was one time like, you know, how was surgery? Win some, lose some, you know, just really worrying people around us, but you know, that's good. That's a good doctor on NBC. Anyway, St. Irvine was a book that Shelley wanted to be a great epic, like any of the old classics, and he actually managed to put a lot of work into setting up this large, expansive world for the main character. But by the end of the story, you could tell Shelley just didn't want to work on it anymore, and he basically just ends the book to no great conclusion. And because of this, the reception for the book was terrible, and was perhaps evidence that Shelley should just stick with shorter prose. Finally, the last work Shelley would complete in 1810 was a political pamphlet he wrote with a friend he met at Oxford named Thomas Jefferson Hogg. The pamphlet was called...
What a fucking name.
I know.
I mean, that's far from the silliest we've had here, even in like recent
know,
episodes.
But you know that's what his parents were doing too. They were like, we're going to name you after a great man. Thomas Jefferson.
But wait, we need to keep the last name, man.
It's a terrible last name too. 2 G's though. H-O-G-G. The pamphlet was called Posthumous Fragments of Margaret Nicholson, being poems found among the papers of that noted female who attempted the life of the king in 1786. Which Margaret Nicholson was a real-life lady. She did indeed make an attempt on the king's life in 1786. On August 2nd of that year, she approached King George III with a blank piece of paper she said was a petition as he was getting out of a carriage. And when she got close enough, Margaret stabbed the king twice in the chest with a dessert knife. I could find 0 mentions of how long the blade was, but I assume big enough to cut a cake.
Like that's pretty
fucking big.
like,
that's a big deal. But either way, King George thought it was embarrassing to be hurt by a lady. So he said, quote...
She had a knife, man.
I know.
Like, what the fuck?
No, he said, quote...
I don't care if it's a kid that has the fucking knife. He's got a knife. Like,
the poor creature is mad. Do not hurt her. She has not hurt me. And it's like, dude, you're bleeding out the fucking chest.
Every one of your orifices is bleeding right now.
We see it. Your heart, it's...
You have 2 new ones now.
You're pumping blood out on the far crowd, dude. Is it thunk, thunk? Like, fucking...
Just comes out to address and just vomits blood. Just...
Well, anyway, as it turns out, Margaret Nicholson thought she was the rightful heir to the throne, and she died in a mental hospital 42 years later. But with this, the posthumous fragments of Margaret Nicholson, Shelley and his friend Hogg pretended these were the real writings belonging to her, discovered by her nephew after her death, which is funny, because she was actually still alive at this point. But the 2 young men took the opportunity to espouse their own political and religious views, much of which seems to have been inspired by another political pamphlet called Inquiry Concerning Political Justice by a man named William Godwin, who is today known as the godfather of anarchy. So Shelley and Hogg were just using a crazy woman as an anonymous outlet to spew their political beliefs, which may seem like a bad idea, but no one at the time was actually sure if Margaret was in fact fucking crazy or just a radical. To Shelley and Hogg, they blamed the monarchy for implementing wars and called for an end to the royal line. And although they only printed 250 copies of this pamphlet, they quickly sold out, and they became very popular among the students. Now you might be wondering, how did Percy Shelley manage to write all these works and still attend classes? Well, the answer is simple, Caleb, and you may recognize this method. He didn't go to class. You thought you invented it.
I didn't look up who invented it.
That would cause work.
It just felt good.
Instead, Percy Bysshe Shelley would stay in his room.
Wait, do you mean there's nothing physically stopping me from just leaving this place? No. Oh, shit.
Did you guys not have truant officers?
Good luck.
I'm homeless, bitch. Find my address.
I'm spry like a kitty.
So Shelley would either stay in his room and either conduct scientific experiments, probably with gunpowder, or he would read and write. And I don't know if Percy's parents knew the kind of things he was writing, but they were already blaming everything on Percy's friend Thomas Hogg. His parents would for sure be a little upset that he was instilling in their son atheistic and anarchist views, especially because England was right in the middle of the Napoleonic Wars, and all the boomers believed everything would be fine so long as everyone trusted in God, king, and country. But luckily for Mr. and Mrs. Shelley, their fears were assuaged when they found out Thomas Hogg's parents were filthy fucking rich too. They were like, okay. So
they're like, oh, he's
cool.
He's just being loud.
Yeah, he's fine.
Oh, he's an edgelord. Okay. Yeah, he has no grounds in this. Like, actually doesn't have any dogs in this fight. Like, at all. Like,
by just the end of 1810, less than 6 months into his stay at Oxford, Percy Shelley mailed copies of a pamphlet he wrote called The Necessity of Atheism to all the heads of Oxford and all the bishops, too.
So he blew a bunch of stuff up.
Didn't go to class.
Got bullied a bunch, yelled about atheism.
Yeah.
Wore a duster, had a neck beard.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell me which 40K faction was his favorite?
Fuck, if only I knew one to tell you.
Oh.
Isn't one of them called, like, King Kong or something, or what's his name, Kang?
Fucking no.
No, something with a K.
You're pretty far off.
I feel like I'm not.
I don't think there's a single one that starts with K. I'm thinking. Yeah, no Ks.
Whatever.
No.
There's a Chaos faction, right? Is Chaos something?
That starts with the C, Jordan.
Well, I know, but, I figured they would have edgelord Warhammer even further by just spelling everything with a C with a K.
No, they only do that with orcs because it's funny.
Laughing.
All right.
Well, pretty quick, Percy was called into the office and asked in front of the school board if he wrote The Necessity of Atheism and sent it out to all the fucking heads of the school and the bishops.
Look, man, we understand you're just going through a stage right now, but can you please just not... We're just worried about you.
Yeah.
And humiliating yourself and annoying all the fuck out of your peers.
Well, so here's the thing. He didn't sign his name, so they didn't know, like who wrote it, but they knew exactly the kind of kid Percy was. So he was like the first one that they picked out. Instead, Percy elected to give no response at all, which is all the answer they really needed. Like, he could have just said no, and they probably would have left him alone or just given him some small punishment. But instead, because of that, on March 25th, 1811, the 18-year-old Shelley was expelled from Oxford. They also kicked out his friend Thomas Hogg, just for good measure, though they were never really sure if he had a hand in it. I'm sure he did. When Percy returned home, his father was fucking furious, and his dad gave him an ultimatum. You will stay tutored at home with the teachers I provide, or I'm cutting off all contact with you. And Percy said, no. In particular, because Harriet said that Mr. Shelley was just slowing him down.
Damn, all right.
Aren't you going to ask?
Ask what?
Who the fuck is Harriet?
Yeah, I have no idea. Yeah, but that's kind of the thing, though, is I was like, damn, must have spaced something. Like the way you said that shit. Yeah, who's Harriet?
Harriet Westbrook was actually a girl from Percy's sister Elizabeth's school, about 15 years old. Someone he'd met when he was visiting family on one of the few breaks before his expulsion. Well, in that time, Percy was actually vying for another girl's attention, his own cousin, also named Harriet. But cousin Harriet thought Percy was weird and a little creepy and maybe a bit too attached to gunpowder, so she instead introduced him to a girl she knew named Harriet Westbrook, and they clicked. What's funny is that when Percy found out it wasn't going to work out between himself and his cousin, he got so depressed that he thought he was actually dying of some unknown illness.
God, what a fucking sap.
I'm feeling the effects of being down bad.
Well, Jesus Christ, back then that would have been a midlife crisis, right? Like,
I suppose so, yeah. I'm going to buy a boat.
I'm going to die at 24, unwed.
Dude, do you remember,
I know it.
Do you remember the kids that were super about, like, I'm not making it to 30 in, like, fucking school? Did you ever know anybody like that did that shit?
Yeah, no way.
I mean, not, like, you know, as friends, but just, we had a couple of those, you know. And it's like, dude, you live in the suburbs. You're fucking fine. Shut the fuck up. You know, I remember one of them just being like, no, I'm going to kill myself before I'm old. That way my family doesn't have to worry about me. And it's like, I don't know if you're going to have a family, you fucking weird. Shut up. You know, you're fine. But when Percy met Harriet Westbrook, he found what he was looking for all along, which was really just a yes man. Percy and Harriet got to know each other for about the next 4 months via letter before he got expelled from Oxford, and in that time, Percy did most of the talking. He talked about his views on religion, politics. She pretty much just listened. Now, even though Percy had cut off all contact with his folks at Harriet's insistence, he was still getting an allowance from his parents, and he still had some of that old money fuckboy cash on hand
Wait.
to vacation in Wales.
So his dad's threat to him of cutting off contact didn't include not giving
cutting
him
off
allowance.
his money. Yeah, which if you're having troubles with your parents or with your kid, monetary value is pretty much the only thing keeping you around.
Look here, son, I'll keep giving you money, but you won't have any of the guidance. Okay, so you better not just party.
Hey, without my help, all right, you're just going to start partying, taking a bunch of drugs and alcohol, you know, just doing those things that I wouldn't do. I mean,
doing those things that someone at your age absolutely would love to be doing without any supervision whatsoever. Like,
yeah, at fucking 18.
Yeah.
Oh, by August of 1811, just a few months after his expulsion, Harriet was begging Percy to come back home and marry her. And even though Percy thought marriage was stupid and immoral, the two were wed on August 25th, 1811, when he was 19 and she was 16. Thing is, when both sets of parents heard about the news, as this was a surprise to both families, both Mr. Shelley and Mr. Westbrook looked at their kids' spouse and said, absolutely not. To the Shelleys, Harriet's family wasn't rich, and to the Westbrooks, they built their own businesses, small as they were, and thought that was much more elegant than just having money passed down to you. They're not wrong. I'm with their folks on this one, you know?
Yeah.
Well, even though they could have...
You're marrying a trust fund kid?
Yeah.
Gross.
Well, even though they could have stretched out what cash they had and probably coasted for a couple years, Percy, Harriet, and his old friend Thomas Hogg all decided to move from town to town to just try and get by with no jobs for the next couple months. And only about a month and a half later, by the time they hit October, Percy decided to travel to Sussex alone to make up with his father, which means they clearly weren't making it on their own. By the time Percy got back, he found that Harriet's sister, Eliza, was now living with them as well. I feel I've seen you live in situations like this before. Just, you get home one day and, hey, new roommate. You know?
Yeah, you don't get...
I feel like you've been that guy.
Nobody's been on the lease.
Yeah, exactly. According to the landlord, there's only 2 people living here instead of the 11 that are somehow sharing 4 rooms.
Jordan,
3 rooms.
I feel like most people can actually relate. You're in a rare situation where you just lived with your dad until you lived with your girlfriend.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, played it safe.
Mm-hmm. We're going to call it.
Yeah.
I feel like most people have had a random roommate at some point. This isn't some strange thing.
I mean, I feel like a quick text message like, hey, by the way, when you
hey,
come
this is
home,
my buddy who needs a place to crash for a little bit, and then it slowly turns into, but we're going to save money on rent.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I just loved seeing it from the outside in because I feel like yours were always extreme situations of your living conditions, but it was always like, oh, God. God, I'm glad, you know?
I'm like, oh, man.
I remember like...
Thank God I have all this stuff.
Yeah, like just half the stairs being gone. There was somehow a plate stuck to the side of the couch.
Yeah, that was pretty sick, dude.
That was like, wow, damn.
What the fuck did that? How?
I don't know. I'm not talking like a paper plate. That was like a full-on like ceramic plate.
I think,
like, wow,
okay, what Jordan's describing is he had one place that I stood in briefly, like we were there one day, and on the side of this like canvas couch, like some kind of like canvas couch, like there was indeed just a fucking plate, like a dirty, nasty plate stuck to the side of it, like under the armrest. Just like, no, it was like on the armrest on the side, right?
Yeah, but it should have like
it should have fallen.
And it was
and
just
it's like
there.
it's like no matter what's on it, even if you were to put some like insane amount of adhesive on that, like it wouldn't be like a quick thing. Like that would have to be an intentional thing. So my best explanation for this is that somebody was incredibly, incredibly drunk, probably took too many bong rips and was just like crossfaded out of their fucking minds, and then was getting the spin so bad that they were like gripping the side of the couch and then like having their hands places, and then their hand just happened to slide onto the plate, and that's why it stayed there for so long, because they were using it to stabilize themselves.
That could be.
That's the best theory that I have so far as to how that could have happened.
I mean, what I also remember though was that the center table to the living room wasn't a real table. It was a Fisher-Price table.
Hell yeah.
And I don't think that thing had ever been cleaned. Like anybody took a wet wipe to that thing or anything. No. So I think if the plate were just down there, it grabbed something and then eventually was placed on the couch to where it just got there.
Well,
you know?
No, I don't like that explanation either, because if it was down there and then grabbed something on the bottom side, how would we have gotten it from the carpet in the first place?
Well, I mean, I think the Fisher-Price table was plastic, so it may not have glued on super well there, but the couch, if I remember right, was like it's some sort of fabric.
I see what you're saying.
Maybe. I don't know.
I mean, the Fisher-Price...
I'm not going back there to find out. I'm sure it's still there.
the Fisher-Price table concept was nice, because it's kind of like...
I did like it, honestly.
You know, you just see it on the side of the road, and you're like, oh shit, look, there's a fucking coffee table.
Everyone says,
you know?
well, I want to go cheap because I don't care, therefore IKEA. You know how you can go cheaper.
Random shit.
Yeah, random shit. How do you think we got these couches?
like oh, seriously? Like, oh, this is for kids? Weird, because I own it now, and we're using it, and we're so-called adults. Like, but the best thing about that plastic stuff was, like, it's sturdy. It's meant to stand up to toddlers, so if it gets, you just take it outside once a year and hose it down.
Yeah.
And then put it back in there, and you're probably
hose is stolen, too.
Yeah. It's probably just been turned into a large ashtray at that point, but...
It was a large ashtray.
Yeah, but,
But that's a great thing of plastic, it barely burns, Mm-hmm. Anyway, so Percy, he comes back home, and look, man, you told me to just point at the can instead of just asking you to refill it for me, please. And you would get the hint. And now I'm shaking it and I'm pointing and you're not doing anything. No, it's actually
not that. I actually was wondering if anybody's going to be able to pick up the leaf blower outside was the look I was giving.
Oh, I don't care.
Yeah.
Fill my can.
All right, man. Let's give you another can real quick.
Anyway, so Percy comes home and fucking Harriet's sister Eliza is now there as well, right?
Okay.
Well, it turns out Eliza was there for her sister's protection while he was away. As when Percy was out of town, his friend Thomas Hogg tried putting the moves on Harriet. Now, Percy actually didn't...
Wait.
So it was originally Percy, Harriet, his wife, and his friend
rapey.
Thomas. Right, a little bit, because she's still 16, as I remember. So,
because like if my significant other were to need protection from someone,
yes,
that would be rapey.
it's weird. Yeah, it's a
Instead
little bit
of them
too
just being
much.
like, I am or am not interested.
Yeah.
Like,
And maybe it did just go that far, and she was like, I'm a 16-year-old in a weird situation. Maybe I should get my sister in here, which still valid.
I get you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Percy, he actually didn't give a shit that his friend did that, because he was into the free love movement. Not the, what is it? Not libertarian. What do they call it? What the fuck?
Libertarian free love.
No, what's that thing that Marquis
No
de
government,
Sade was into?
no
What
relationships.
was Marquis de Sade into?
It's
start with an L.
Libertine.
Libertine, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not like the libertine, it didn't go that far, but he was like an anarchist, and he didn't believe in marriage. He didn't believe in like paperwork of any kind, and he was like, hey, if you want to fuck, you want to fuck. But at the end of the day, Harriet was still his wife, so even though Percy was on Hogg's side, he had to move his wife and her sister elsewhere, just leaving Hogg behind. Now, it's not like he was some bastion of fidelity himself. For a while now, Percy had been corresponding with a 28-year-old school teacher by the name of Elizabeth Hitchner. He called her shit like sister of my soul and my second self. Just as he had wanted someone to sit there and listen to him prattle on about philosophy with Harriet, Percy had now found an equal with Elizabeth, someone he could actually have an intelligent conversation with. But it seems like all correspondence...
Okay.
I mean, in his eyes... But it seems like all correspondence quickly dropped off when Percy asked Elizabeth if she'd like to come live with his wife and her sister, which was already kind of weird.
Do you want to come to my punk house? Do you want to come to my trust fund punk house?
I know everyone says
no,
smoking,
I'm 28.
I know everyone says smoking crack is weird, but once you try it, it's not that fucking bad, No, even though Percy Bysshe Shelley hadn't written anything in a while creatively, he still seemed to enjoy the art of it. And one poet he admired in particular was a man named Robert Southey. When Percy found out the guy lived in the vicinity, he tracked him down, knocked on his door, and asked to just hang out. As it turned out, although Southey and Shelley had zero commonalities in their philosophies, they actually got along great. But at one point, Percy opened up to Southey, telling him, "You know who I really liked? William Godwin, the godfather of anarchy. That guy was a genius. It's too bad he's gone." And Southey was just like, "He's not dead." What? Yeah, he lives right over there. What? So next, Percy just showed up to William Godwin's door. And when Godwin opened up, Percy told him he was willing to drop everything in his life to become his disciple. He told Godwin that he had published many things, but his views had caused a rift between himself and his father. But that was okay, because he was going to start a new life in Ireland, where he was planning to cause a political upheaval where the people would finally rise up against their British overlords. And Godwin just kind of stared at him and told Percy he shouldn't go to Ireland. He needs to make up with his dad, and he should probably go back to school. Click.
Good. Good.
Understandably, Percy was a little disheartened, but he did manage to do at least one of the things that Godwin mentioned. He didn't really make up with his dad, but he spoke with his dad's friend to see if they could convince him to loosen the purse strings on his allowance a bit, and it worked, Woo.
Can I have some more money just adjusting for inflation?
It's not even that. It's just your kid is asking for more money adjusting for inflation. He had someone else do it for him.
Shit.
Percy now had a steady income from doing nothing again, and he and Harriet planned on making their trip to Ireland to overthrow the government. Thing is, they had to leave a little sooner than expected, because the Shelleys started running into issues with their neighbors, who complained about the gunpowder experiments, and their landlord, who complained about Percy's constant use of a firearm inside the house. Let's get a little William S. Burroughs in here.
Pow, pow, pow.
And during this time, Percy also
Why can't
claimed...
you just have a raven like a respectable raven?
Right? Just a little racist, but also respectable, Well, during the time, Percy also claimed that some men had broken into his home and tormented him before they left, which honestly may have been a hallucination. Yeah, like who the fuck just breaks in and just like, idiot, jackass, fraud? Who does that? We should start
Hey,
doing
just wait
that.
for him to come outside. Like,
Yeah. It has been noted by historians that whenever Percy was in a very stressful situation is when he was most likely to hallucinate. So that was probably it. By 1812, the Shelleys had made it to Dublin and were soon on the street corner handing out a pamphlet Percy had written called An Address to the Irish People, Proposals for an Association of Philanthropists. In it, he looked for a repeal to British rule and an end to oppression. And for all the shouting they did on the streets, the police were quick to send Percy and Harriet's name to Home Security back in England. So when the Shelleys got back home, they were immediately put under surveillance. But hey, you remember that school teacher that Percy tried to get to live with them, Miss Hitchener?
Mm-hmm.
Happened.
really?
She shacked up with the Shelleys for at least a couple months, but soon moved out. He probably asked for a threesome. That's usually it.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? The talks he had with Miss Hitchener no doubt led Percy into finally getting back into writing. In 1812, he published a poem called The Devil Walk, about a day in the life of the devil, who goes about town and does shit like telling priests that without him they'd be without a day job and shit like that. He really used this poem to build...
I don't like him.
That's fine.
At all. I mean, like...
And I know, and here's the thing. He used this poem to just build a straw man argument against anyone he didn't like.
Dude, we've had like a lot of despicable people on.
Yeah.
But the thing I dislike most about this guy is just his general lameness.
It's the bastards. It's people like him that are just like, man, I can't find any capacity where I would want to hang out with you. You know?
I think I dislike him the most. And we've had sexual predators on, man. Like absolute monsters. And God, I feel like there's like,
yeah,
Jesus. Like I just see people like this in public and start running generalizations in my head. I'm like, I bet this guy does this kind of lame ass shit.
Yeah, no,
like,
I've known people like this, and I
that's
can
the
verify
thing,
it
like,
because of social media. Like, oh, you are doing this. You're doing the
like,
Percy
fuck,
thing,
dude.
Yeah, no, there'd been a food shortage where he lived at the point that he made this poem. Grain prices were at an all-time high, so he just like blamed everyone and everything that he didn't like, and he just attacked them all through this poem. It was just a huge straw man argument of a poem against anyone.
I feel like this guy, like, I feel like our generation's equivalent is just the trust fund kids train hopping wearing Carhartts with an acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
Telling everyone that they need to stop contributing to the fucking system.
Yeah. Until the system starts working for them very, very well. And then they're like,
the only part of the system I need is the ATM hooked up to my parents' bank account. like,
wire me money, please. Yeah. Well, anyway, besides The Devil Walk, Percy Shelley also wrote a story called Queen Mab, a philosophical poem with notes. It's a poem about a fairy queen who explores dreams, and of course, each dream is an allegory to some political point of view, which Percy just so happens to share. Although Queen Mab would go on to be his first major work after his death, it wouldn't be known within his lifetime. Instead, out of the 250 copies made by the publisher, Percy handed 70 of them out to friends, and the rest were kept locked away in storage. Mostly because the viewpoints in the book promoted free love and atheism, and the publisher was worried about getting his ass sent to jail. Now after this, things go relatively quiet in Shelley's life for about a year, until February of 1813, when Percy has another hallucinatory episode. He says he got his ass kicked by some unknown assailant in the middle of the night. No idea why Harriet didn't see them. They just broke in and kicked the shit out of Percy and left. Which, if I personally do him, I'd do it.
You sure it wasn't your girlfriend, Bo?
They had tall, brutish shoulders. It's just, they were built like a fucking teapot. They were just...
Fucking scary hands.
These mannish hands that
bunch
slap
of
me.
fucking pear-shaped men just came in and fucked me up.
Well, it was because of this attack, though, that Percy, Harriet, and her sister Eliza, who was living with them again, they all fled to Ireland, which coincidentally lost them their government surveillance. Now, some like to speculate that this manic episode was actually an excuse to flee the country and lose their tail.
Okay, wait, hang on. Okay, like, I'm sorry. How scary is government surveillance back then? No matter what you're doing, like, you could be up to some serious shit, look out the window and be like, oh shit, that fucking carriage is moving, and you're like, oh man, we gotta get out of town. We only have 2 weeks until the pigeon gets back to let them know that fucking people are coming. Like, seriously?
I don't think it was like people, like fucking getting McDonald's and like pulling an all-nighter to make sure that they don't move out like they're a murder suspect. I think it's mostly like,
did they have like fire beacons set like Lord of the Rings? Like, what the fuck?
Go knock on the door and see if they're still there.
Like what the fuck is this?
Well, it was all because they did that whole thing where they were handing out all these pamphlets in Ireland saying, hey, rise up against the British. And they were like, well, that's instigating a war. Let's not fucking have that happen. So, I mean, technically he was on a list. And I guess one day they knocked and they weren't there. And they're like, ah, shit, they fled the country. And some people have said that
like they're under surveillance but able to flee the country. I'm sorry.
I don't think
the stakes are so much higher with government now.
I know. Like, well, now they don't need as much. They're just like, we set up a few cameras across the street in the bushes, and now we can just watch them from home. Like, that's at-home police work.
We'll just bring a drone.
Yeah, like, so fine. Yeah, back then, I can't imagine that they were around the clock. No fucking way. They're just a couple of fucking kids.
Unless it's like a bunch of dudes camped up surrounding the fucking house, like laying siege. Like,
no way. I really do think that it was like an every other week type of surveillance where they're like, they still there? Yeah. They handing anything out? I don't know. No. All right.
No, I can't just. That complex. What do you want me to do? Stay here 100% of the time? They're gonna see me.
Yeah. So no, people. Some of them like to speculate that this hallucination and the reason why they fled the country was all an excuse to get rid of their government surveillance. But honestly, they don't seem that smart. Honestly, I have no doubts that they didn't even know that they were being watched to begin with. There's no fucking way that Percy sussed that out.
Like mental health issues.
He
for
does.
Sure.
Well, I'm sure that whenever there was surveillance, he thought there was none, and whenever there wasn't any, he thought there was. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He's crazy. I mean, once Percy calmed down, they actually just went back home anyway. I don't have like a number of days that they fled to Ireland, but like it was a relatively short time. I think it was like 2 weeks or something, and then they're like, all right, let's head back, so, and also, here's the thing, they had to go back home, because once again, their pockets were beginning to run dry. So Percy shows up to his parents' place asking for even more money. And as much as I'm sure they didn't want to, Percy's dad gave in, probably because Harriet showed up pregnant. On June 23rd, 1813, the 19-year-old Percy and 17-year-old Harriet had a daughter, named Eliza Ianthe Shelley, though she would be known as Ianthe throughout her life. And while having a baby has been proven to always fix relationships, this time, for some reason, it didn't.
Whoa.
Yeah. Percy said Harriet was letting her sister Eliza influence her day-to-day decisions, and Harriet said Percy wouldn't stop fucking other people, both of which I'm sure were totally baseless accusations. So for the next year, the couple lives mostly apart, with Harriet, of course, taking the kid. But because they were too busy bitching at each other, Percy and Harriet were forgetting one important thing: the paperwork on their fucking kid. You see, even though the two were married, they were so irresponsible that they forgot to file for a marriage license. And because of this, when Ianthe was born, they had to act like the baby was out of wedlock on the birth certificate. And because of that, they were targets of the 19th century version of CPS who like to focus on wedlock babies. So they were immediately in danger of having their newborn baby just taken away. So yet again, in March of 1814, Percy and Harriet get married for a second time. And this time they manage to file all the correct paperwork so their kid doesn't get taken. However, Percy immediately regrets his decision. He sees this as the second time he's made the same mistake. He calls his marriage a, quote, rash and heartless union.
Wait a minute, what have I done? I could have got my kid taken away.
That would have gotten rid of all my problems.
Like, damn it!
So while he says he does it so they can keep Ianthe...
What's the point of being a trust fund kid if I have responsibilities?
Yeah, no, you're soon going to find out. Percy didn't really seem to care all that much about his kid either. Just 2 months after his second marriage to Harriet in May of 1814...
Maybe those bullies were onto something, man. I don't know.
Yeah, they should have picked on him more. Give him more of a personality.
They could just smell it on him. They were like...
So 2 months after their second marriage, Percy Shelley starts showing up to his old hero William Godwin's door yet again.
Sure, he loved that.
Oh, yeah, right? Yeah. And at this point, Godwin had a couple business ventures that weren't doing super well. So when he saw this young, stupid, fucking rich kid knock on his door, he said, "Come on in." It was here that the 20-year-old Percy met Godwin's lovely 16-year-old daughters, Claire and Mary. And while Percy would have his dalliances with Claire later on, it was Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin that he fell madly in love with. Or so he said. Percy showed up to the Godwin residence most days, and soon Mary and Percy were taking long walks, uninterrupted, like on June 26, 1814, when Percy and Mary declared their love for each other on top of her mother's grave and fucked 6 feet above her corpse. You remember that? We had a whole discussion on this.
Man, what the fuck, man?
Yeah, no. Let me sum up the discussion that we had. Actually, almost 2 years ago to the day.
Yeah, I don't even...
That we did our Mary Shelley episode. So there were large headstones around the cemetery, not necessarily in rows.
Mm-hmm.
So you could hide behind them, and people were not coming around unless, like... I mean, people were coming, but the people weren't walking around the graveyard unless they had a specific reason to be there, usually a death day, birthday, whatever, you know? And so it's like, the cemetery was actually a great place for fucking back in the day. It was quite common for people to do it. I feel like I would have done it above a random person's corpse.
Yeah,
and not my
person's. You know, like, would you be more, like the idea of even just having sex with someone while my parents are in the same building makes me uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Like, let alone...
I do.
Yeah, no. Fucking, yeah.
Yeah. Now, William Godwin soon found Percy to be kind of an annoyance, but with the money Percy could have been spending on securing a future for his wife and daughter back home, he instead told Godwin he would use it to pay off his debts. And it wasn't just leverage to keep banging his daughter. Percy was very starstruck. I mean, Godwin was his hero, the fucking godfather of anarchy. But giving his money away was unfortunately also very common for Percy, too. He often got into debt because he wouldn't stop taking his parents' money and giving it away to local charities and poorhouses. So in this case, bailing out Godwin just so happened to align with what Percy was into anyway. But the thing is, Percy didn't have near as much cash as what Godwin was in debt for, and he kept promising and promising that he would get it eventually. In the end, just when Percy was really gonna impress Godwin with a big old check, Percy's parents finally said, "You'll get your inheritance when we're fucking dead and not a day sooner." Well, that's a bummer, but that's okay. Godwin will understand, because Percy's been over every day for the last few months, and they've really gotten to be friends over that time. Nope, Godwin was fucking pissed. As far as he was concerned, this kid used promises of money to come over and fuck his daughter on the daily. And he knew this kid was married too. But that's okay, because Percy said he was ready to show his commitment toward Mary. He said he was willing to have Mary move in with him and his wife.
Anarchy.
Nothing would make me feel safer. Yeah. When that didn't work, he promised to leave his wife to live with Mary instead, which just meant moving in with Godwin.
Okay, fine. Can I move in with you? No, kid, get the fuck out of here. Like,
no, it's okay. It's a hard decision, but I'm going to leave my old wife and child behind to come live with you and your daughters. No. Well, William Godwin threw Percy out and told Mary she was forbidden from ever seeing him again.
so he had money.
Yeah. And you might be asking why Mary Godwin was so into this douchebag. Well, Mary held on to her parents' views like they were scripture. You know, her dad was the father of anarchy, and her mom was the mother of feminism, Mary Wollstonecraft. But her mother died after Mary was born, and she watched as her dad just kind of held her mom up to this godlike status, and she could tell that her dad wasn't as revered as he used to be. So Mary saw in Percy someone who still held on to all of her mother and father's ideals, something which William just didn't do anymore. Just a month after Percy was thrown out, on July 28th, 1814, Percy, Mary, and her stepsister Claire eloped to Europe. Thinking ahead this time, Percy had actually secured a 3,000-pound loan for the trip, almost $250,000 today.
Wait, like a big boy loan?
Mm-hmm. A fucking $250,000.
Ooh, dear.
This would be well and good, but Harriet got pregnant again, so Percy had to leave some money behind for her as well. So I want you to understand this. He's still left with his mistress and her stepsister to Europe, but his wife got pregnant for a second time, so he's like...
Has he fucking... Well, how long has it been since he wrote something? Why are we talking about this guy right now?
He is very influential.
Really?
Promise.
Okay.
Yeah, like, he really is.
When did we get to that part? How many fucking pages are left of this? We
just have a couple.
Well, you
honestly.
fucking lied to me. That's way more than 10 pages.
Is it? What are...
I can't, you know...
Oh, the last one is fucking sources.
I can't read, motherfucker. I can count.
That's 11. No, we're at the end of this. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, this is page 8. How did you get to 8 on the floor? Man, you're...
Because there's 8 on the floor,
too.
jackass.
No, there isn't.
Yeah, look.
Dude, they're numbered on the top. Look.
6. Okay, it's a little confusing when they're like all on top.
Oh, okay, yeah.
When they're all on top of each other like that, sometimes you mistake some, okay? Just fucking...
That's why I keep getting into orgies by accident.
Oh, God. Oh, shit.
Anyway.
Oh, God damn. None of these people are my girlfriend. Fuck.
All men again.
Hang on. I have to make a call.
Oops. All dudes.
Babe. Yeah, again. I'm sorry. All men. I know. I don't know how it keeps happening.
So still, though, the 3 of them made their way to Europe where they could live free for the first time in their lives. And, oh, shit, Mary, isn't that your stepmom? So, yeah, the kids were in the town of Calais, France, for all of a few hours before Claire's fucking mom showed up. You see, while Percy, Mary, and Claire thought they were slick and would leave without their parents noticing, it wasn't but a few hours before the Godwins were like, it's quiet. Where the fuck are the kids? And for whatever reason, they knew they'd try going on a grand tour, with there being only one boat that took you from England to France. So while the kids were on one boat, all their belongings were on the next, tagged and ready to be delivered to their hotel. And that's the boat their mom was on. So she's just standing there right next to their bags, knowing she's got them cornered, fucking fuming the whole ride there. Just like, let's see these tags. Yep.
Just mom rage, dude. No.
And she had the hours to stew, too. Well, at the end of the day, she couldn't convince the kids to come back. And she certainly couldn't physically force them to do it either. But she didn't leave completely empty-handed. You see, she didn't get the kids, but she took most of Percy's money with her, with the promise that if the kids blew through their cash, they could wire them some more, which I got to admire. They knew how goddamn irresponsible these kids were, and knew they blew through it as soon as they got there. Not only that, nobody wants to call their parents for money. It's fucking painful.
I mean, maybe fucking Percy.
True.
Did we go over this at all when we did Mary Shelley? I feel like this is like mentioned like this exact situation.
We did. Yeah. We have gone over this, and in the cases of authors that we have covered where there is some overlap, there is going to be a little overlap, but I will say on the next episode for Percy, we're not going to really go over the Villa Diodati, the whole thing there. That's mostly Mary's story. Everything pertaining to Percy, I didn't really talk about him unless it needed to be with Mary, because I always knew we were going to end up with this dude. Mm-hmm. So, either way.
So, all right, back to counting. And I can indeed count. I just want all my listeners to know that. Mm-hmm. So, we've got 2 pages left.
Yeah.
Will this man write anything?
In that time? In the 3 pages that I'm holding here?
Yeah, like, is he gonna fucking write anything? What's going on, dude?
He has written things.
Are you out of fucking... Yeah, barely shit, though. Like,
yeah.
Like, we were halfway through and he was done writing stuff. And like,
I will say, yeah, this is mostly set up.
I'm gonna say that, like, at least, what was it, like, an 1/8 of it was plagiarized?
There was 1 poem. That's barely... He's done a lot since then.
Has he?
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like it.
Well, no, not really, but...
Like,
still, it was just
why
one
are we
poem.
going over this guy? Are we just going to start doing them on, like, everybody's family members? Like...
No. Oh, that's a good idea. We should.
It's not.
I mean, that's what I ended up having to do for Mary Shelley anyway, was I was like, fuck, Mary Wollstonecraft is her whole own thing. I'm not going to go over her father. I don't care about the godfather of anarchy. I'm just going to throw that out there. We did go over his whole story with with Mary Shelley.
I mean, I'm going to go ahead and say we're going to have a lot to say about that if we do go over him, considering he was the godfather of anarchy and you just told me that he had 2 failing businesses.
We went over it in Mary Shelley.
Okay.
Which, by the way, almost to the day, you can go 2 years back from when this is going to be posted, and that's when we started our Mary Shelley episode. So you can pretty much just go back there and check it out.
If you can count well, like me, which I totally can.
Now, the thing is, even though Percy hadn't written as much as... even though William hadn't written as much as in his earlier days, Godwin was still a recognized name, and Percy was the son of a known member of Parliament. So then, when the news got out, it was pretty quick that people were talking about this diplomat's son handing money over to Godwin and taking his 2 daughters with him to Europe. The rumor soon spread that William Godwin was pimping out his own daughters to none other than Percy Shelley. Well, at the very least...
Oh.
Well, I mean, on the outside... You know, it's kind of like when those documents on Epstein Island get released and people are like,
you were just
what was
itching
Stephen
for that,
Hawking
weren't
doing
you?
there?
There's no relation. This is not a good comparison.
It's made a lot of good memes
Everybody's just excited about Stephen Hawking right now. Okay?
I know. No
Just
real
calm
facts
down.
are out there yet.
No, we're
God,
staying
I'm
in our
waiting.
fucking lane. We're talking about Percy Shelley right now.
By the way,
right?
Stephen Hawking, future episode. Watch out for it.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Oh, god damn. Are you ready to sound like a complete fucking idiot, Jordan? There is no way in hell you're going to be able to present anything that man has written like...
I'm going to dumb it down to you, which to me is...
To me.
I
To
mean,
me. Okay, yeah, cool,
some
cool,
of
cool,
us,
cool.
Scientists.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Sort of a scientist here with our associates in history.
Hey, at least I don't put my shoes on with fucking Velcro anymore, all right? I tie them like a big boy. Even double knotted.
I feel like you wear slip-ons mostly, actually. So
yeah, I'm pretty lazy.
Velcro would require...
I have to bend over to do the fucking...
Velcro would require more coordination. And
that's why
maybe
I just
point out
wear-
the struggle that it takes to actually get to the angle where you can place the shoe onto your foot.
Yeah, that's why I just wear the slip-ons now, you're right.
Like,
And why get dressed when you could just wear a robe?
can you walk me through socks as a process for you?
I don't wear them. Well, at the very least, the kids seemed to enjoy their time in war-torn France, as this was still during Napoleon's reign, but eventually made it to Switzerland, where Percy finally wrote to his wife Harriet, asking her to meet them, because they were broke, and he wanted the money he gave her back. Well, she never replied, but the three still managed to make their way through Germany and Holland, before truly exhausting their funds and going back home to England on September 13th, 1814, after having spent about a month and a half on the road. As relieved as the Godwins were to see the three of them back home safe, they were surprised to see a fourth. Mary was pregnant, and both the Godwins and the Shelleys refused to help them. So Percy starts doing what Charles Dickens's dad did. Just starts securing
Look,
loans.
guys, we'll give you guys money throughout your entire lives, but if one of you has a kid, that's where we draw the line.
I mean, he did just knock up his mistress, you know? Like, I'd be a little... I don't know.
What do you want me to do, man? Like,
I know, but it's like, what else are you supposed to do? That's still your fucking progeny. That's still... I mean, they're not their responsibility, but it's like... I'm not going to put the kid through the fucking ringer because your parents are fuck-ups,
Look, man, we don't have exact dollar amounts here, but maybe it's like, dude, I'm giving you enough fucking money. Stop fucking partying.
Yeah, really.
Be responsible. You have enough money to take care of this entire family and this kid now, too, without even working. Get your shit together.
I'm not going to say how I know them, but I know people who have been in this situation with their grandkids being caught in the middle of this and their own kids being fuck-ups, and, like, it's just draining. There's no good way out of this shit. It's just, you're going to spend that money. What else can you fucking do? And that fucking sucks.
Well,
Anyway.
tell you, but I won't talk about it here. Let's go.
So Percy starts doing what Charles Dickens's dad did. He just starts securing loans wherever he could, only to run to the next town and just not pay them back. But then a couple things happen. Percy's grandpa, Sir Bysshe Shelley, dies, leaving Percy the sum of £220,000 as an inheritance, a little over $14 million today. Unfortunately, Percy's dad puts a stop to it, because just like William Godwin, he knows exactly how he's going to spend it. But that same year, Harriet has a second kid, Charles Bysshe Shelley, and Percy's like, hey, Dad, you know what's really going to help me out? About £220,000. And his dad says, you're not getting a fucking cent. Instead, when we die, all our money and royalty gets passed down to your kid Charles instead. And Percy immediately takes his own parents to court. On the sadder side of things...
I want it.
Yeah. On the sadder side of things, in February of 1815, Mary Godwin gave birth to a baby girl prematurely, and she ended up living just 10 days. This would be the first of many pregnancy problems between Mary and Percy. Now, one thing that Percy Shelley believed in was free love. Not quite to the same degree as the libertines, there it is, but he was into the revolutionary idea of no strings attached fucking and no marriage.
With adults, though.
Yeah.
Because libertines can go to hell.
Yeah. Like I said, not quite to the degree of libertines.
And with consent.
Well, and it was something he incidentally learned from the teachings of Mary's dad, William Godwin. He himself, of course, reneged on that deal, and eventually, and even though Percy was currently married to Harriet, he too felt the same way. And frankly, he didn't care who knew it. He was almost certainly banging Mary's sister Claire at this time, and for the long periods that Percy wasn't home, who should be a new roommate to him, Mary and Claire, but his old buddy from Oxford, Thomas Jefferson Hogg. So while Percy's out banging either Claire or his own wife sometimes even, it seems that Mary and Thomas were getting a little closer over time. Maybe a kiss here or there, but frankly, it didn't really seem like Mary was all too into the same free love movement that Percy was.
Okay, may I just say, the shit seems so much fucking wilder when you remember that, like, there is not birth control the same way there is now.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean, dude?
Pulling out has always been a method, I guess, but like...
Ish,
yeah.
Like, get the fuck out.
But
like,
goddamn, dude, there's no television, like, no video games. What do you... I mean, really...
Like, really, how long...
Like,
how long without any birth control...
Here's the thing.
Are you both going to be smashing before...
Right. And here's the thing. I mean, listen. Reading is a hobby of mine. I like reading. But I can only do it so many minutes out of a day before I'm just like, I want to do something else. Let's see what's on YouTube. I get it. And back then, that was it. Your only hobby was reading. So it's like, you got to start
Jesus Christ,
hanging
you don't think
out.
people had other things that they could, like, you know, little
like
crafts,
what?
like crafts and hobbies and shit? Like,
what?
You could, like, sew shit.
No, that's a fucking job.
You could, like, make clothes. You could, like, work with, you could ride
Better
horses
start
or some
making
shit. You got
baby
money.
clothes. Why ride horses when you could be riding?
You're just
Thomas
like, oh my
Jefferson
God, back
Hogg,
in the day,
you know?
nobody had any. You could, like, whittle, man. You could start
That's
woodworking.
That's a job.
You could make a little stone hut. Like,
That's a job.
No.
That's what I'm telling you. Those are jobs, man. That's a hobby now.
No, Jordan, this is a you thing.
Nobody was out there making stone huts like your Cormac McCarthy.
No,
That's a fucking
holy
job.
shit. No, Jordan, do you view anything that isn't you taking in media that someone else has made as work?
I don't really understand the question, but I feel attacked.
So I feel like
you're in the wrong.
I feel like in your head, if you're producing or making anything, then it's work and can't be a hobby.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a job.
Jordan, you need to bring this up with somebody. That's not good. Like you could produce things.
No, man.
Is that why you view the podcast so seriously? You take it as serious work and not just a hobby?
I don't take it serious at all.
Are you sure
man,
about
this
that?
is what I'm saying. If I'm whittling, someone better pay me. I'm an objectivist, all right? This is the way things go.
I'm a little worried about you, man. Like,
well, either way.
How about
after a while?
I don't know. Like,
I don't want to do those things. I don't know.
Might feel rewarding.
After a while, Mary kind of got sick of it and insisted Claire and Thomas move out so that it could just
All
be
in a
her
cup.
and Percy. Huh?
Never mind. Let's go.
All right. In August of that year, the Shelleys moved yet again to flee their debtors, where Percy wrote one of his first major works, an epic poem called Alistair, or The Spirit of Solitude. The story, interestingly, is not told from the point of view of the main character, but of someone telling you about them, someone Shelley calls the poet. The poet is in search of, quote, strange truths in undiscovered lands, and as such, he travels the world looking
They could paint or something? I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm still on this.
I write as a hobby. I do other things.
The guy that we're supposed to be going over, which in the subject of this podcast should be a fucking writer. Hey, he could write something. I don't fucking know. Sorry.
So the poet is in search of strange and undiscovered lands, and as such, he travels the world looking for the personification of the universe's infinite knowledge in the form of a woman. Because, of course, with it being Percy, yeah, it fucking would be. The poet travels both real life and the dream world in search of this, quote, veiled maiden. Till at last he believes the only way to find her is through death. Oddly, though...
Thank God.
Oddly, though, as the poet contemplates his end on the bank of
his
a
dad's
river...
like, I'll fund that.
As the poet contemplates his end on the bank of a river, an unmanned boat floats towards him, and the poet decides to hop in. The boat flows down the river faster and faster until he finds himself on the plains between life and death, and finally into the world of the supernatural, where he can finally attain the world's knowledge. I think it sounds kind of neat, but when it was originally published the next year in 1816, people fucking hated it. They thought it was too odd, too surreal back when that wasn't even a word. And it reads like an H.P. Lovecraft story, so maybe he was just 100 years too soon on that. One critic even called Shelley mad, which I'm sure fucking enraged him. The same year Alistair was released, Mary Godwin gave birth to a son, William Shelley, who was named after Mary's dad to try and get him back into their good graces, which didn't work. And while Percy was joyed to have another son, he was also running out on people to give him money. And he was running out of people to give him money. And he was now in debt with his parents, Mary's parents, and even his own wife, Harriet, who was smart enough to have financial autonomy at this point. And believe it or not, that £220,000 inheritance Percy's dad was keeping from him, Percy won the court battle. But in a quick 2 years, all of that money would be gone. $14 million. 2 years.
Damn, dude.
By 1816, that's a lot of Gundam models because
Spend
that's
all
a
on
hobby.
trench coats.
No, he spent it on Gundam models because that's a hobby that people have, and that's
enough
okay.
to play fucking 40k Apocalypse, dude. That's fucking crazy.
Barely enough, yeah.
Your dream 40k army.
By 1816, the 20.
That's enough to play original Warhammer Fantasy on the scale that's in your head.
By 1816, the 23-year-old Percy
Anybody
Shelley,
understood those jokes? Please hang in
No
there.
one.
Life
No
gets
one
better. You'll be okay.
We believe in you.
If you didn't understand those jokes, don't learn about them. Just let it go.
You can talk to a real girl. We believe in you.
Don't.
Don't.
Your path may lie in letting it go.
You're so strong now. Why would you give it all up by talking to a woman?
Just maybe just let it. That's also an option. You don't need to conform to these standards of, everybody around you telling you that happiness lies in a relationship and a family. It may actually be painting little plastic toys.
Could be.
Yeah.
$14 million worth. Someone out there has
that'd
it.
be sick, dude.
Someone has it.
That'd be so sick.
Man, that should not be your fantasy with $14 million.
Dude, I'd shoot you in the face for $14 million of fucking not just the money. The miniatures.
So a 23-year-old Percy Shelley was destitute with several kids under his belt, and frankly, he was looking to start a new life in mainland Europe by himself. But suddenly, Mary's sister Claire shows up saying she's going to Switzerland to meet a guy who's totally expecting her to show up out of the blue and invites Percy and Mary to come along. So, the three of them make their way to Lake Geneva, along with Mary and Percy's infant son, William, to meet a man by the name of Lord Byron. My sources today.
On this podcast.
You have indeed. Poems and Lyrics by Percy Bysshe Shelley, Peter Popper Press, 1934, and Wikipedia. Shut up.
Peter
Look,
Popper
they thought
Press.
it was a good time. There's a good name at the time. Peter Popper Press. It's fine. It's a good one.
It was pretty funny, but
I will say, Lord Byron is someone else who will have his own episode at some point, but I haven't gotten that far yet.
are we done with Percy?
No, he hasn't died yet.
Fuck,
I'm
man.
sorry, man. It is a two-parter. He's done a lot of shit in his life.
He hasn't done anything.
Not yet, but this is all set up.
He hasn't done
It happens.
shit.
It happens. It happens.
Okay, fucking A, dude. This
He has written things. They're just not well known yet. We're going to get into the territory of more well known things.
Okay, because he's not even being an artist. He just has
asshole.
money.
Yeah, no, he's a dickbag. But there's a lot
I don't
going
really
on in
wanna,
his
like,
life.
Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, Lord Byron is somebody who we will get into someday, but I don't think it'll be another 2 years by that point.
No. Okay, I remember the name. Can you give me like a little summary of dude again?
He's an old money fuckboy who wasn't expecting to impregnate Claire, but he did. And then he tries to fuck off to Europe, and she shows up. Okay. And he's not about it. I don't think I go into it for the next episode, but we did on the Mary Shelley one. He did not like Claire at all. It was just supposed to be a one-night stand, and when they're at the Villa Diodati,
no fucking birth control,
on
man.
Lake Geneva. Yeah, no, he made a rule. He said, I am not allowed to be alone in the room with this woman, or rather, she's not supposed to be alone in the room with me. One of you has to accompany her whenever I'm around in the same room, okay? You're not allowed to get up and pee. You're not allowed to go get water. No, we're not to be alone. He did not like that girl, which feels bad because, I mean, now you're going to have a kid with her.
All right, man, goddamn.
But he himself was a poet, so, and his life is very interesting.
So we're only halfway through Percy.
Yeah.
God fucking damn it, dude.
I know, he's an asshole, but, you know, look. It's the way she goes.
All right, well, we'll see you guys next week. Or actually, probably in several weeks.
Probably, that's the way she goes.
Or whenever.
Yeah, whenever the fuck we want.
Yeah, I don't know, man.